If you'd like to see how I do a fill with Polygel along with this summer orange nail art, please keep watching. So the first step to doing a fill is removing the design you currently have on. I'm using a medium 5-in-1 bit to remove this 3D chrome design. And in this video, you're gonna see me go back and forth between my left hand and right hand. It's just how I ended up filming it, but the process would be the same for either hand. Please be sure to use a dust collector and wear a mask. You'd be surprised how much dust and product comes off even from one set, so highly recommend getting a dust collector. I personally use the Young Nails one and I really like it. 3D nail art can be pretty bulky, so using a tapered drill bit was really helpful for removing it and just removing the parts that I really needed to. And of course you wanna work a little bit around the cuticle area just to kind of smooth it out and make sure if there's any lifting that you remove that. I tried my best to keep the product underneath, as even as possible when I was removing the design, but I will say, because again, this is kind of a chunky design, it was a little bit uneven. You can kind of see it here, which is fine. Once we kind of reapply product and shape it, it'll all even out, but that can happen just depending on what kind of design you're moving, like charms, things like that. And if your product is looking a little bit uneven after removing the design, you can use a hand file. I'm using an 80/80 grit hand file. This is a pretty coarse file, and it really helped kind of smooth things out. But you can kind of see it's still kind of looking uneven here. And again, we will fix that when we go in with more product. These 80/80 grit hand files are my favorite. They are my go-to. I have it linked in my Amazon storefront. You can get a bunch for a really good price. I really love it when I am especially shaping my nails and trying to get a very crispy shape. And it's really great for smoothing out the nail in general as well. And the last thing we're gonna do in terms of just kind of removal and kind of evening things out is take a fine grit sanding band, and I'm focusing this on the cuticle area. You don't really want to go on the natural nail a ton at this point. You really want to focus on removing any areas where the product may have lifted, and just kind of debulking the cuticle area as needed so we can go in with new product. And also really great for, again, smoothing out the nail. These are the Pana 240 grit sanding bands. So they are not very coarse, but I really enjoy them both for natural nail prep and for using them over the surface of the nail. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, we're switching back and forth between hands, which is fine. I think it's helpful to show how things are done on both hands. So imagine we've already seen me remove the product here, same process on the left hand. But as part of the fill, you want to push back the cuticle. Just kind of gently push that back. That's kind of the next step here. And you will see I don't have much growth at all. You really can't see it here in this video especially, and it can definitely be a little difficult to do a fill when you don't have much growth, but I really wanted to film it because I was ready to change the design. And again, taking that fine grit sanding band and just smoothing out that cuticle area, removing any lifting. This is where you can kind of prep the natural nail as well if you do have a lot of growth. Again, this is the 240 grit sanding band. And this is my non-dominant hand, so I tried to use a lower speed, like 3 RPM, because I obviously am not as good as controlling the drill as I am with my right hand. So I just like to go slow and take my time and go at a lower speed. So yeah, basically just finished doing that to all 5 nails, and then we are ready to move on to application and applying more polygel. So we are going to take some Young Nail Swipe and a lint-free wipe and run that over the surface of each nail, remove any dust, cleanse and dehydrate any growth that you've had, any natural nail that you'll be filling in with new product. I really like Young Nail Swipe. I feel like it's worth the money. I've only had it for a few months, but I feel like it's been working really well. And then we are going to take Young Nails Protein Bond as our primer, focus it on the areas where you've had growth. You can apply a little bit to the cuticle area, and this also creates kind of an anchor for any polygel that you'll be applying. And again, I don't have a ton of growth, and I feel like the color of this polygel makes it kind of hard to see as well, but this is kind of the process that you would do. And then you can take your gel base coat of choice. I am using Madam Glam, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm trying to be as neat as possible in the cuticle area, and then applying it over the surface of the nail. And the reason I do that is because the gel base coat basically also acts as an anchor for the polygel. And in this case, I wasn't only going to fill in the areas of new growth near the cuticle, I was also going to go over the surface of the nail because it had come out so uneven after me removing the 3D design. So I'm gonna be applying, not just, filling in the cuticle area with product, but also putting some product over the rest of the nail as well. So wherever you're planning to apply product, I would recommend you put that gel base coat and cure, and make sure you have that sticky surface to use as kind of an anchor. And then from there, we are going to apply the polygel directly to the nail and take some 70% isopropyl alcohol as our slip solution and our brush. And I am focusing on the cuticle area first, really trying to use the edges of the brush to tuck it in, and kind of turning the brush to use, the right side and left side as needed to tuck the product into that area. And then just dragging the rest of the product down. As I mentioned, I did want to apply a layer of product over the surface of the nail as well, so I'm doing that here and removing any extra product that I don't need. And once you've kind of patted everything into place, you can kind of just run your brush over the surface of the nail to make sure everything is smooth, and continue to remove any extra product. Removing extra product, especially along the sidewalls and free edge, is really going to cut down time when it comes to your shaping. And the great thing about polygel is, when you need to apply more product in areas that might be kind of needing more product, you can do that. You can kind of just squeeze out a little bit from the tube and apply that and mold it into place. And I'm not showing it on camera, but I am curing between each layer of polygel. I use the Young Nails lamp. Please be sure to do a full cure between each layer, or whatever the instructions say for the polygel you're using. Especially with polygel, there can be instances where it doesn't cure through the product all the way if you put too much. I've experienced that, so definitely I try to cure between each layer as much as I can. And then again, just doing the cuticle area again here, and dragging the product down. This is, again, I'm using my non-dominant hand, so the motion is not as controlled as it would be for the other hand, but the key is really just practice, even with your non-dominant hand. The more you do it, the more you will get used to it. Again, really getting comfortable with the brush that you're using, learning how to use different parts of the brush for different parts of your application. Like I said, I like to use the edges of the brush and kind of tilt upward when I'm doing the cuticle area. And then using more of the body of the brush when I'm just kind of smoothing the product out. And the nice thing about doing a fill is that, you don't have to apply tips. The structure of your nail is there more or less, and you're really just applying the product where needed to kind of reform the shape and rebuild that nail set. So, the technique that I was using here worked pretty well, and kind of working on the cuticle area and then dragging the product down to kind of fill in the low parts on the rest of the nail, and then removing any excess product. And once your polygel is fully cured and you're done with your application, you can take a lint-free wipe and Young Nails swipe to remove the sticky layer. Polygel, like other gel products, will have a sticky layer at the end, once you're done with your application, so you definitely want to go ahead and remove that. And now we are switching back to the left hand. So we are starting off with a 5-in-1 fine grit drill bit to clean up that cuticle area. Personally, I've really been liking doing this first as part of my routine, cleaning up that cuticle area just to kind of see where everything is at, and then taking a round pana bit to debulk the rest of the nail, kind of smooth things out, further refine the cuticle area. This is also good for cleaning under the nail, but I personally like to use it to debulk any areas that need to as well, like kind of the apex area here. If you feel like, oh, it's too thick, kind of needs to be debulked, you can definitely use this drill bit to kind of smooth out and even out that area. And back to the right hand, you can kind of see how the way I'm using the drill bit switches because I'm using my non-dominant hand here, but using a lower speed and just trying to really control my drill and debulk the areas that I need to before I go in with the 80/80 grit hand file and clean up the sidewalls. Definitely make sure you season the edges of your file, especially before you shape those sidewalls. You definitely don't want to cut yourself. And just like I was using this file to smooth the nail when we were removing the product, once you've applied your product, it's also really great to kind of smooth out the nail and even things out. I find with the hand file, it just helps get things smooth in a way that an e-file sometimes cannot, especially with the 80/80 grit hand file because it's so coarse. So I definitely recommend running this over the surface of the nail when you're done. It can really just help give it that, really good like finishing touches. And of course, this file is also great for the free edge, just making sure that your shape is nice and square. And then I do like to run the fine grit or medium grit can work as well, sanding band over the surface of the nail to finish off my shaping and just make sure everything is kind of even and just to kind of carve out that C curve as well a little bit further. You can definitely use a sanding band to kind of go under the surface of the nail as well. And just repeating that on the other side with the non-dominant hand. Again, this is usually my last step in shaping and I'm using a lower speed here and just trying to make sure I hit like the surface of the nail for the non-dominant hand as well. And now we're moving on to nail art, which is always the fun part, and I'm taking Young Nail Swipe again to remove any dust, especially after shaping. You definitely want to make sure you remove all dust before you go in with your nail art. You definitely don't want the dust particles getting into your gel polish. And I am using this orange color from Nailzbydev because it had been sitting for a while. I kind of like to shake the bottle to make sure the product is kind of mixed up nice and well before I put it directly onto the nail or even a nail art palette like I'm doing here. I actually ended up using a few colors from her Halloween collection, but they worked really great for this particular look. So I am doing the French tips first, drawing the outline with the 9mm brush, and this doesn't need to be perfect. Then we take the actual brush from the gel polish bottle and just fill things in. I am somebody who still struggles with French tips. I feel like hand painted French tips, they're not as easy as some think they look. But this is kind of the technique that I use. So once I have filled in all of the rest of the nail as evenly as possible, I don't cure yet. I go ahead and take this 3D art brush from Acamore. It's linked on my Amazon. And this is like my favorite current cleanup brush to just make sure I clean up that French tip as much as possible. And then I like to just cure and top coat right away so I don't have to worry about it getting messed up. And I'm using the Kupa top coat here. If you feel like it's looking a little bit bulky from the gel polish, you can take your hand file and gently file the free edge again, just to remove any excess gel polish. And I would recommend doing this step after you've applied your top coat and fully cured. So we are going in with our next French tip, drawing the outline as cleanly as we can, but again, not worried about it because we're gonna clean it up. Filling in the rest of the French tip as evenly as possible with that orange color. And you can see even here, like sometimes my process and routine is not so set in place. I don't do like all 5 nails each time. I've already cured the thumb. And I do the same with this finger as well once I've done the French tip and it's to my liking. And again, gonna use that 3D Acamore nail art brush to clean up the French tip and remove any excess gel polish with a lint-free wipe before curing. Now we are going to draw the oranges, basically just taking that same color and drawing a circle up to your liking, how you want to place the oranges, how many you want to draw, but this was just kind of a nail art that I really wanted to try, especially for the summer. I think like fruit nail art just looks really nice, so we are basically just drawing the circle and filling it in, and I'm drawing kind of another one here in the corner, and this is again the 9mm brush and just filling that in all the way and then curing. And when filling it in, try to still keep the gel polish pretty thin. You don't want to put too much. Just try to kind of fill it in evenly and cure it. Putting in too much gel polish, it may kind of get wrinkly or not cure all the way. So definitely want to keep it thin even when filling in larger areas and doing your nail art. And then moving on to the next nail, again, you can draw as many of the oranges as you'd like. Right now we're kind of just laying down the foundation, and you can use that 3D art brush again to clean up any mistakes. I kind of liked these half circles as well. You know, you don't have to draw a full circle. You can kind of just draw some at the corners as well to your liking, and then just fill it in. Now we are mixing some gel top coat with this Trick or Treat reddish orange color. And this is basically how it turned out. You could just stop here with the oranges, you know, and add your leaves, but we are going to do some shading. I've really been trying to kind of add these details when doing nail art. I feel like it can really kind of take your nail art to the next level. I'm certainly not an expert on shading yet, but I've been trying to kind of add some of these smaller details where I can. And you can already see here that just adding that kind of reddish orange color mixed with the gel top coat is already kind of giving the orange some more dimension so it doesn't look so flat. This is the baby blender brush from Nailzbydev, and I basically just scooped up that product and I'm focusing it kind of on the edges of the orange. So in that last clip there, I was just adding some more of that Trick or Treat color to that mixture we had already made. And after we cured everything, we're going in some more with that color that we just mixed with more of that reddish orange in it. And just going over those parts that we had shaded, adding a little bit more dimension there with the reddish orange color. And again, you can see how just this little bit of detail can kind of change your nail art. Now we are taking the black shading gel from Nailzbydev, and I just put some directly on the palette. You don't need to mix this with anything. It's a shading gel, so it's already kind of ready to go. Taking that baby blender brush again, and now really focusing on the edges of the orange and kind of blending in. And again, you can kind of see how, you know, these various steps are adding a little bit, you know, it's helping the oranges look a little bit more realistic and not so one-dimensional and flat. And so this black shading gel is really great. You know, it's not too pigmented. It's really meant for this type of work where you're trying to add a little bit more detail to your nail art. Now for the leaves, we are taking that gel liner that I just showed and just drawing out the leaves in various positions. Right now we're just kind of doing the outline. And I did kind of various placements for each of the oranges, but just have fun with this. You know, there's really no set way to do it, and it really kind of all comes together in the end, so don't worry too much about the shape being perfect. And do not cure yet. We are going to be adding in a lighter green color and doing some more blending. This is the Ghost with the Most, again, Halloween colors, but it works. So again, don't cure that darker green, add in the lighter green, kind of, you know, in half of the leaf. And then I basically just took that same brush and kind of started mixing it together. And that's kind of why we don't want to cure it yet. You know, it makes it easier to blend it together. And so you can see it comes together pretty nicely here. And again, it's helping add some more dimension to the leaves and helping it look a little bit more realistic and just adding some more detail in there. And I'm pretty much still using the 9mm brush here. It's really great for line work as well, and then for kind of blending the colors as well. And you can see how, you know, basically the lighter green and the darker green, they really complement each other, and you can even go over kind of the stems and the outline to add some more detail as well. And once it's all blended together, you can cure it and then go on to drawing the next set of leaves. Again, just kind of doing random placement here and just drawing the outline with the darker green, not curing, adding in that lighter green, the Ghost with the Most color, and then taking my brush and kind of dragging in and bringing in that darker green and lighter green color together to kind of blend it, and then cure and top coat. Here's the final result. I will have all product details in the description, and I will see you in my next tutorial.